Okay, hi there. Welcome back, and we do apologize for that disruption because of the, again, the online learning problems. My name is Prof. Atif Dawood, and I come from the UK. As you've seen from the first slide, tonight I'm going to give a short presentation on effective strategies to motivate students online. Right, the overview on what we should cover tonight is a brainstorm activity. What is online learning? Why is online learning important? How can teachers motivate students online? And the last part would be just open question. Right. Just briefly, we have a very short brainstorm activity. What if the internet stops working for a day? We've experienced now one of the incidents which delayed the session tonight because of the internet and connection, and that's maybe a real example from real life situation. So if we restrict that to the education sector or context, imagine if the students are, administering an exam and the internet stops. So it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be, chaotic. One more thing is if we are setting some assignments for students, it will be impossible to send it by post, which is, one of the advantages of online learning. Okay, so let's move. The next slide is just giving us a brief definition of online learning. What is online learning? It's confusing, the terminology is blurred, but we can summarize it in a few points, and that's not inclusive. Online learning is the education that takes place over the internet. It is often referred to as e-learning, among other terms, so it's not the only discipline of e-learning. Online learning is one type of distance learning. Online learning doesn't take place in a traditional classroom. We highlight the last point, which is traditional classroom. So it's vast. So online learning is versus a traditional classroom. So we don't have students in a classroom setting, and that will cause a lot of problems from what we can see since the emergence of COVID-19, where teachers are, been struggling with how to convey the message of the input of learning to students online. I'm not for online learning, but situation has been imposed on us. So we can define online learning in different ways, but these are just some hints to have some glimpse on the definition of online learning. But again, the proper definition for online learning is debatable, and there is a bulk of research you can read about from the internet or online from research. Moving to the next slide, which is, why is online learning important? Right, first of all, I'm not for online learning, but again, we have to highlight that because of the current situation, our students are not in a classroom setting, and we have to convey the message, we have to teach them given the current situation. So the only way is to have them, in an online learning setting. So we will have some of the rationales for online learning. The first reason is online education enables the teacher and the student to set their own learning pace. Of course, in research, that's debatable, right? That can be on a classroom setting, it can be online. Okay, another rationale is there is added flexibility of setting a schedule that fits everyone's agenda. Yes, that's a strong point, one of the strengths of online learning, because if someone is working and studying at the same time simultaneously, then he can adapt his agenda to fit with his full-time, maybe part-time education and full-time employment. A third rationale for online learning is that using an online educational platform allows for a better balance of work and studies. A good example for that is those who study through the Open University in the West, in Europe particularly, they have, many advantages. They take advantage of that. They can work, full time, and they can adapt their time accordingly for research or, any course of study. Okay. Of course, these are not the only three rationales for online learning. We can add up as many rationales or reasons as we can. Given the current situation, imagine if now there have been, restrictions like COVID-19 or any other future, virus that may come out or emerge in the future. What should we do? And we've seen the problems that happened to took place last year when the students, some of the courses of the students were cancelled, and the students, education has been delayed for minimum 6 months for up to 1 year. So many exams have been cancelled, and many courses have been delayed, even in the kingdom at present. So online learning is an alternative, the only option for education to continue, for students' education to continue. However, despite the importance of online learning, there are many disadvantages and weaknesses for it. So you can read about that, you can check, and you can look at the outcome and the results of research. Personally, from my own experience, I'm against online learning for many reasons. My experience is in the West. We've seen many courses in the UK being advertised clearly, in a flowery way on the internet. When it comes to the address of the college or the courses, actually, the actual address of the college is not there. So that's why we cast doubt on the credibility of online learning, outcomes of certification. And we've seen in the kingdom, they do not recognize the qualifications which have been received online. It's either full-time or part-time. Right, so let's move because time is running. We're moving to the third part of tonight's presentation. How can teachers motivate students online? Okay, now that's a big question and is very essential for us. It depends on many factors, one of which could be, from my own experience, teachers, sensitivity, and whether the teacher himself loves his job, as an educator. Does he come from an educational background? Does he love his students? Many factors here. But again, we'll give you some of the tips, not all, some of the tips that can help staff or teachers motivate their students online. Okay, the first thing is teachers might encourage students to share their own learning expectations and goals related to the course content. Right, so we're sharing that online, so the students can go and build on and extend on their activities and the input.
Continue. Wait.
Continue.
Yes.
Okay, the input by giving, extended activities online.
Yes.
I can see many participants. Don't worry, I won't scroll that. Thank you. Okay, so teachers can encourage students to share their own learning expectations and goals related to the course content. You can build up, and extend on the tasks given by giving, extended activities to students and say, okay, go online and just, we can use these vocabulary items to create, a paragraph or a topic, blah, blah, blah. Okay, another way to motivate students online, to encourage students to draw on past experiences and facilitate a dialogue of discussion with regular active participation. We do that. An active teacher is doing that in every single session. So first of all, you ask the students to build on their own experiences, like scaffolding. And from there, you start and initiate the new, input of that session. 3, we may provide announcement and emails with information about the resources available for struggling students, mentorship, coaching, or counseling services. That's not only for the students who are struggling, but for all levels of students, because normally from research we have a minimum of 3 levels in any classroom. So you can, set the material at different levels so that all the students are working at the same time, because now at the moment is one of the disadvantages of online learning that we cannot have collaborative learning settings, effectively. We can do it, and I do it in class online by asking students to share and divide, the class into groups. So if I have 3 questions, I would divide the number of students, divide them by 3 groups. And if I have, for example, 12 students and I have 4 questions, I divide them by 4 groups based on the number of tasks or questions per task. Okay, so another way to motivate students online is to empower students by teaching them where to find materials. I underline and highlight that, where to find materials and how to use resources in an online college platform that will help them improve. Right, so the teacher is a coach, is a guidance, is a model for students. He should give them some ways or some references to help students find materials online. So we link that. Say, for example, before giving a writing task, for example, I ask my students to go and read about the topic first. Then they will have a lot of information from the internet on the topic before writing. The problem is when we teach the 4 skills, some of the staff, start with the wrong sequence of skills. So logically, we have to teach the 4 skills, according to that sequence. Listening, we call it listening, then speaking, then reading and writing. So I cannot give them a task on writing before asking students to do some reading. That's very important because they are going to have, a lot of information and a lot of, modeling techniques before the students start writing about a specific topic. Another way to motivate students, another technique or tip, is to provide real-life application through simulation, case studies, role-play activities. That is very important. That 5th, tip is actually should be followed, undertaken in every single session, because real-life situations are the only way to help students make up, things, stories, or write about something. Because when you ask students, okay, answer these 3 questions and apply them to your real-life situation, he would say, no, I don't have this, I don't have this or that. But if you say to him, imagine, okay, imagine that you have, the most expensive car, for example. Imagine you're sitting on a cloud and you want to send a letter to the people to describe the situation in which you've been. So real life situation will help, enrich students' mental lexicon, will enrich their vocabulary items, and many advantages for that. We should be having a separate presentation on that. And that, by the way, simulation, role play, all these stem from imagination and figurative language. We use figurative language in our classroom, consciously and subconsciously. Okay, another tip for helping students learn online is to provide visual aids or even field trips that enhance students' learning and application of learning outcomes. So now, at the moment, given the current situation of COVID-19, that might not be possible. That's actually, it's impossible because you can't call students and say, okay, guys, you're going to go for a field trip. And after that, you call them back to the classroom and you draw on that like what we do on the classes in the West, right? So they send students to the supermarket, for example, or library or bookshop or some factories for maybe 1 hour, half an hour, or half a day, and they are invited back to class, and the students start jotting down and writing about their experiences from the field trips they had. That's a good way, but the only way to help students do that, alternatively, online, is to ask students to imagine that they've gone for a trip, field trip, to a specific farm or to a specific place or factory, and give them the 5 tips: what, where, when, why. Okay, what did you see there? How was it? How do you feel about that? Okay, describe the situation extensively. At the first stage, the students shouldn't worry about making mistakes, because there is no learning without making mistakes, and we have to encourage students to go on whether they improving listening and speaking. I personally ask my students, talk as much as you can and make mistakes, because there is no learning without making mistakes. And even in writing, when it comes to the writing skill, okay, write as much as you can and don't worry about the spelling mistake. Later you're gonna adapt that in the long run. So, but if I pick on every single error, students will have what's called inhibition in psychology, and they would be scared to talk, they would be scared to write. Okay, so another right. Another tip for encouraging students to learn or to motivate them online is to invite guest speakers that are experts in the field, in order to spot students' interests and highlight relevance of the learning concepts being taught. From my point of view, that's not feasible. If we say, for example, if you ask yourself, for example, how many guest speakers have come to the kingdom in the last 2 years, it would be about maybe maximum of 3, depending on the activity of a specific university. So usually, if you invite guest speakers, given the current situation, will be maybe mostly difficult. But again, that could be, in the normal circumstances, it could be one advantage of online learning. Okay. Another way to improve or to enhance or to encourage students online learning, for their online learning, to talk with the students about how the class assignments are relevant to future career. To be honest with you, that applies to the normal classroom setting, not just online, to the online learning. You can discuss that with students, assignment relevant to future career. They will get back to you and give you the right answer, whether online or whether in a classroom, the normal traditional classroom setting. I call it current, not traditional, because traditional will take you back to maybe over 20 or 30 years back. Okay, another way to motivate the students online, or one of the tips, is to teach students to reflect and take control over their own learning by using reflections. Okay, if you like, to solicit feedback about their own performance and where they need to improve. Of course, the feedback is one effective way to push students forward and to improve their performance, because if the student doesn't know his weaknesses, then he's going to continue making the same mistake. He cannot adapt. One more thing is, reflection is, from research, reflection has been proven to be an effective way to improve the students' performance. So you ask students, by jotting down, saying, okay, what do you think of that question? What, from your point of view, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? And actually in the West, they give a questionnaire to students to evaluate himself. There's a special form for that, for students to evaluate their performance. And that's nothing to do with the evaluation of the lecturer or instructor or the coach. Right, so here there are many ways to motivate students online. These are not the only ones. Let me give you just a brief scenario of what I'm doing in my class, what I'm teaching now online. Normally what I do, the problem with online learning, that, to be honest with you, number one, we don't know if students are there or not. And I put, some of my comments last year regarding the assessment of students online, and I made it very clear that there might be even some students who are not alive. We don't know if the student is alive or not. That's number one. Number two, giving students some of the quizzes online. To be honest, they will open the books at home and they will copy from it. But if they, administer the exams on campus, then there's more control there. So so I'm not for the online learning. I'm against the online learning because of many demerits or disadvantages and weaknesses. But as I said, it has been imposed on us because of the current situation. There is no other alternative but to teach students online. So just briefly, what I do, I call all the students on the list. But unfortunately, some students say, okay, the mic is not working. But the mic will not be working for the whole semester. That's one thing. And if I have a task, for example, one exercise that has 3 questions, then I divide the entire class, the attendees, into 3 groups. If I have 4 questions, then I divide the entire class into 4 groups. And I inform students that everyone should participate. Even your answer is wrong and you're not sure about it, then just participate. That will not affect you. You have to be confident, you have to participate. Right, then after that, we take it in turn. Some students actually turn on, the blackboard and they leave it and go away. When you call them, even the mic is working, they don't answer, they don't reply because they are scared that, the attendance might affect them. But luckily, there is no penalty for students, absence online. Okay, so then after we go through, I give them, like a brainstorm activity in the first 3 to 4 minutes that's linked to the theme of the lesson, the theme or the idea or the objective of the session. From there, you are in control. You have to call all the students through one session. You might find 1 or 2 or 3 guys who, maybe we trust them. The mics are not working properly, but that will not continue for the whole session. So you call them back again. And also, so all the work should be set in a collaborative setting as much as we can, though, or given the online learning situation. So we try. That's the only way, because in the normal circumstances, if I am in the classroom, I divide the class into groups because the outcomes from research, collaborative learning, has proven to be more successful than the individual learning. And I have evidence that for that from research. My master was on collaborative learning. So I myself have applied that to the 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing in the UK, and it proved, it has given me statistical significance, results, which can prove that when we put students in groups, they would learn better, whether you're teaching listening, speaking, reading, or writing. But unfortunately, what we can do now is just split the class into groups and assign tasks for each group for a specific time, 1 minute, 2 minutes. Then we ask each group or one spokesman of each group to give you the answer. There is no way we can do more. We cannot do more than that. And also for there are many other ways that may help improve, students online, education online. Okay, now it's time for any questions, please. attendees if you have any questions on that. That was a brief, summary of presentation, and we do apologize for disruption of the internet communication tonight. We hoped for the presentation to be longer, but for reasons out of hand, that's the current situation. So now it's time for any questions.
Interesting idea, like
Right. No questions?
no, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this open discussion now for them to ask.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no question? Right. So I'll get back to other ways from real life situation or from experience in cloud that would help teacher, motivate or encourage their students online. Okay, imagine you have, some students teaching, for example, listening and speaking. You would give them at the beginning one task, like a brainstorm task. And the brainstorm task, if you don't have any, they just imagine, just give them imaginative or, one of the tasks, like imagine, okay, imagine you're sitting on a cloud and please send a message of 1 minute time to the people on the earth, for example, to your friend. Describe the situation. How do you feel about that? Describe what you can see. Okay, that's one way of, brainstorming activities. In the normal circumstances, in the other universities, I used to allocate the first 3 to 5 minutes for students to see one of the videos from Unlock 1, Unlock 2, Unlock 3, for many reasons. The first 5 minutes in any session, because normally in the normal classroom setting, students come late. The first 5 minutes will be like, brainstorm activity for them. They've just come in and the brain, is active. So it will be, two ways. Number one is it will improve their listening skill. At the same time, they will grasp and add up to their mental lexicon new vocabulary items. Okay, then they stop the audio or the video and you ask them what, where, when, how, why, all that. What have you seen on the audio? Okay, where do you think that audio, takes place or was taken, in which country, why not? Okay, and why is the theme of that audio important or essential? And you allow all students to give their feedback on that. And from there you start the session. So unless we have imaginative or simulation, which all stem from figurative language, simulation, role-play activities, the students wouldn't be encouraged to progress. Another way is the role-play. Role-play, in fact, is one way of imagination, which is imagination equals to figurative language. Because as we know, language has got 2 levels. Up till now, majority of teachers, language teachers, have been working on the first level of language, which is the literal level of language. Unfortunately, we have to work on the second level of language, which is the figurative level. Any language has got 2 levels. The first level is the literal level of language, and the second level, highest and most difficult, is the figurative level of language. If we have, you know, an expression, a term like she broke my heart, she broke the door, she broke the door, she broke the door, that's a physical meaning, okay? That's the literal level of language. But if I say she broke my heart, then that's not the literal level of language. So students from research after the age of 10 would be able to process the real meaning of the figurative language. So what they're going to say, okay, she broke my heart would mean she made me sad. But if you gave the same terminology to a child under the age of 10, research has shown that students wouldn't be able to process the meaning. And the child might say, okay, but I can't get the meaning of that. You mean that he cut your chest and took your heart out, dried it, and broke your heart? For the child under the age of 10, he would see it, process it this way. But after the age of 10, which our students have already been, you know, adult, they would be able to process the figurative language level, and that's a good chance for us to give as many imaginative, figurative activities to students as we can. So jot down as much as we can, because that's the only way to force the students to write, to produce, to give us a product. And also at the same time, unless we give a feedback, then there is no point for students' work. We have to give feedback, and there are many ways for the positive, but the feedback should be positive. Even if students' work is minimum, we have to be very positive. Okay. Let's see. Okay, another way, but by the way, if we underline that, you know, imaginative or figurative activities in class, we will find, you know, no problem with our teaching, because that will open, you know, the gate for many activities, you know, unlimited activities. So we might say, okay, if you're teaching, you know, writing to argue, for example, agree or disagree, you give them maybe 5 or 10 themes or ideas, and you ask, you can divide the class into groups. Okay, that group will take that topic. Okay, imagine you agree, even if you disagree, imagine you agree to that, or decide whether you agree or disagree to that topic, and tell us why. The point is not to agree or disagree, but students must write extensively and in detail on why they agree or why they disagree. Okay, and that, you know, and another way to help students to be creative, because creation is there, you know, the students cannot be creative without writing figuratively. We give them a lot of tasks, and we might ask them what's the meaning of these verbs there, the meaning of that verb there. Okay, the moon shook hand with the sun, or shakes hand with the sun yesterday, and the moon took the sun. What, imagine if the moon is talking to the sun, what is the conversation or the dialogue? Why not? So from the imaginative writing. And also another way to help students be more productive is to ask students to use a range of different adjectives and adverbs. At the first stage, we can't give them the adverbs and adjectives at the same time. First of all, they should have, you know, a range of adjectives. Okay, after that, the students would utilize the adjectives in meaningful sentences. Another stage is to use the adjective of the same meaning differently. So give more than one adjective that might be similar, like beautiful, like handsome, pretty, and the normal circumstances, which is the literal meaning. Then after that, even these different adjectives that are similar or close up might be used figuratively. So say, for example, beautiful is used for women, handsome is used for men, pretty is used for children. But in figurative language, an old man might use pretty to describe his wife, who is an old lady, figuratively. Why? Because he wants his wife to feel that she is still young. So now we have to take students step by step from we move them away from the literal level of language into the figurative level of language. If we don't do that, they will not reach the required level. Okay. Another way, of course, there are many ways. Of course, there are many ways to encourage students to be creative in class. The strongest, way or tip is to ask them to imagine, underline imagine, make up a story. For example, starting with once upon a time I slept and I dreamt a dream. In my dream, I saw. Then he would start writing a story like that. Another way, because we teach them tenses as well in grammar, another way we start giving students, a model writing. Modeling is very important. Unless the students, see a model really there, visible, they will not be able to write proper writing or effective writing. So that's why the reading skill comes before the writing skill. So if I ask my student to write, before I ask my student to write about something, they have to go and read about that topic first. Then they go back to start writing, because by reading on a specific topic, they will acquire some of the vocabulary items or some of the chunks that they might use as models in their writing. So it's two ways. The students learn vocabulary at the same time. They learn some chunks, maybe grammar as well. So the first stage, we ask students to write, a story in the present simple. The following, day or session, we ask students to switch all the verbs in the present into past simple. Right. Suppose that we're teaching them future. Then I get back to the original story in the present simple, and I would ask students to change the tenses of all verbs into the future simple. So that's, an effective way of moving, smoothly from one tense into another. Students actually, if we do that, students would recognize the difference between tenses indirectly, without, giving ourselves headache by saying, okay, that's the structure of that tense, blah, 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 look at that, look at the S note, look at the ED. They will come out with the irregular verbs. But the best way is to do it indirectly. You have one model, the students, you mark it and say, okay, now you have maybe 3 errors on that. Don't mark every single error for students, because in psychology, students will have what's called inhibition. He will be, intimidated to write a lot or to speak a lot. So just pick 1 or 3 or 2 or 3 maximum errors, the biggest one, the major one in the text, and give the student feedback on that. And students, okay, will avoid that slowly. On the second, text or a draft on a different topic, pick 3 different errors, but not every error, because as psychology has proven and shown from research, that if we correct every single error, then the students will have inhibition and they will be scared to be more productive, whether in speaking or in writing. Okay. Now I don't know if the colleagues have any questions for the time remaining or not. I can continue, because many ways, other tips that will help students be motivated online. Of course, that doesn't mean that online learning is very effective. If you get back to research is debatable. Personally, I'm not for online learning. I'm for collaborative learning, the classroom setting, because even the time span itself is more effective if we are in the classroom, but we don't have other options or alternatives. We have to manage it this way. Right. One more thing is, if you want to give feedback on a student's work, in psychology, as you see, error correction, I'm against error correction, because it will inhibit the students' productivity. If you keep, for example, if a student is talking and making errors, don't stop him. Normally, I don't stop him at all. right? Why? Because if I stop him, we will feel, intimidated, and next time he's not going to answer any question. Okay, but you can give feedback generally without assigning any name, without referring to any student name. You say, okay, I can read that text now. So they would spot the proper pronunciation of a word indirectly without being intimidated or referring to any student's name. And writing is the same. Sometimes it's better to give, general feedback on a student's work, saying, okay, well done, guys, first of all, we have to give, positive. All the time we have to be positive when we give any feedback. So generally, well done, guys. Your work is brilliant, despite having a few errors, such as, for example, focus on the sentence structure. Any sentence in English must start with a subject followed by a verb, and underline the verb here. We have 3 types of verbs in English. That depends on the verb that you use. Sometimes we don't need objects after a verb. In the case of intransitive verbs, such as she walks, she sleeps, she runs, we don't need an object here. And the second type of verbs would be a monotransitive verb, such as she eats a banana, for example. A banana is one object. The last type of verb would be ditransitive verb. When I say she gave her husband a flower. So the verb give requires 2 objects. So her husband is one object and the flower another object. The problem is when students write, they don't consider that rule. That's why in writing they lose a lot of marks because of that. The type of the verb that students use in any sentence would identify whether the structure of the sentence is complete or not. They have to be aware of that. They have to know that that verb would need an object, whether it needs an object or it doesn't need an object at all, or it needs 2 objects. So unless they are aware of that rule, every single day, every single text, they will make errors, and they will give the teacher a hard time to mark them. But we have to teach them, like modern, give them 3 structured sentences. That's an intransitive verb. That's a monotransitive verb. That's a ditransitive verb. So all the verbs in English are measured and can be compared according to the. Remember, have these at the front of your head. Any verb, ask yourself, does it need an object or not? Does the sentence make sense or not? Okay, by doing that, the writing should be perfect. And when it comes to spelling, as we know, we accept the spelling of American English or British English, but make it clear to a student not to create a third spelling which doesn't belong to the British or the American English. Because students make excuses and say, okay, I wrote it this way. Okay, you wrote it that way, but that word doesn't belong to the American English or to the British English. So we accept both, but the student shouldn't create a third, spelling that doesn't belong to the British or the American English. So these are some of the things that would help. When we give feedback to students online also, to be more effective, just pick 1 or 2 errors from students' writing and highlight it and make it clear to them. Okay, well done, guys, but please revise punctuation, for example, revise sentence structure. For example, use commas after some of the connected or linking words there. So once at a time. But if we tell them, okay, well done, without giving feedback, then the student doesn't know their errors, and they will be able to adapt or rectify that in the future. Okay. I don't know whether any colleague has got any question. Now it's an open discussion now for any question. So please feel free to ask. Any questions? Now it's time for any colleague to raise any question, if there is.